Welcome back to another League of Inches podcast episode. This one is our review of Trial Week 2. Congratulations to the Brisbane Broncos, who are February premiers. What a title to have. So basically they've won the comp. May as well just stop everything now and hand the reins over to the Brisbane Broncos. So Adam, as a Para fan, we may as well just pack up, go home. Broncos have got it.
Well, it's good to see them actually win something, isn't it? As you said, February premiers. So luckily for them, they could hold on to these games and these wins. But look, while we're talking Brisbane, let's give a massive shout out to their reserve grade team for obviously helping them get that win. I believe it's a Wynnum Seagulls. Who's the other one? Was it South Logan?
Oh, they've got like 3 or 4 at the moment. I think South Logan is one of them who were on yesterday.
I know their team was made up majorly against that game against Manly, which is obviously look at Manly reserve grade team as well. But It was majorly made up, I think, of Wynnum, Seagulls and South Logan Magpies. So obviously massive for them to obviously come through and get that. And obviously the $100,000 be wonderful that a suffering club like the Broncos, they don't have much money behind them. If they don't need that money, maybe they could donate to some of their feeder clubs and some of those reserve grade players.
Honestly, at the start of it, I reckon they would have not given an absolute shit about this either. And the fact that they've ended up winning it, they would have just been like, oh, yeah, okay, 100,000, a little bit of pocket money. Throw that in the glove box of the car. Absolutely ridiculous.
It kind of makes up for the way they lost that grand final last year, doesn't it? Winning the preseason challenge. Can I make a point? I'm all for this preseason challenge. I like this, obviously.
They need to change it up.
It's like, we just see reserve grade teams. It's even harder now, like massively harder with obviously the teams going to Vegas. We know it's going to continue. So I'd like the Nines to come back. I love the Nines. I'm a big fan of the Nines, and I'd like the Nines to travel. Obviously, spent time in New Zealand and Perth. I believe before COVID hit, Newcastle was lining up to host it, which would have been fantastic. So bring the Nines back. You can still mix your Nines with your youth and your regular players, but bigger prize money, make it bigger prize money. Still have your NRL preseason here, start a little bit early, but this preseason cup challenge, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I've got a better idea. If we're going to do this preseason challenge and teams are going to roll out reserve grade teams, let's make it interesting and make it a knockout comp, make it run a little bit longer, like they kind of do with the FA Cup in England, the FFA Cup. And let's bring some of the country teams in. Some of the reserve grade teams that aren't affiliated with NRL clubs, bring them in. And, let's have that kind of challenge going on. It could last like 6 weeks, play a couple of Tuesday, Wednesday night games, because I tell you what, the country teams would love that, wouldn't they?
They would, and that also opens up the avenue of like the players that are just retired, etc. They can keep going and play with those country rugby league teams for like another year or two, help them along in that competition and give them some pointers and stuff.
The Newcastle comp this year, I believe there's 15 players that play in the NRL. I think it's about 15, I believe. Like you've got blokes like, I'll just give some examples, Blake Ferguson, obviously Brock Lambs at Maitland. You've got, is it
Todd Carney's up a bit further. I think he's up at Port Macquarie.
He's up at Byron Bay. Yeah. You got Pete Matadia. You got Terrence CEC still floating around. There's heaps of them. There's Kieran Holland. There's so many players floating around the Newcastle club. But if you chuck some money in, look, $100,000, or if you make it more, make it a couple of $100,000, would go a long way for some of these country clubs that instead of going to someone like the Broncos.
I agree, and yeah, it will be interesting because I just don't get the concept yet with this preseason. They're trying to make it so it's something to play for and that the crowds get into it. I was there yesterday and it was the weirdest feeling at the end of the game. It was like, you don't celebrate it. You just sort of walk away. Everyone was just like, oh yeah,
we saw a little bit it's a glorified trial.
Yeah, it was just, and I understand that I don't want to risk the key players for injuries, etc. And that is completely fine. But if the NRL is trying to make this an actual competition and play for money, etc., then we need to make it so it's actually treated a bit more seriously than it currently is. And I love seeing the young kids on display. Do not get me wrong, but if they're going to keep it to this, maybe extend it out an extra week and have that first week is the real youngsters are in, and then make plans in place. The last 2 weeks have to be a majority NRL squad for like a guaranteed 60, 70 minutes or something, or just little changes like that. Like we all love the Nines, but the more and more it continues to not come back, the more and more I start to think I don't know what the reasons behind it is. They don't want to bring it. So
that was the good thing about the Nines, was you got that mix of youth and experience. Like, I'll give obviously a reference to Parramatta. Parramatta played pretty much a reserve grade team last week, and then a first grade team for the first 60 minutes of this week. The disappointing thing for that was you didn't get to see some of these good young up and coming kids. It's the same for all teams. Play with some of the superstars of the game, which you would have liked to have seen. Like, I've mentioned obviously in some of our group chats, I would like to see Blaze Tulagi for Parramatta. He come on for Gutherson, but I would love to see him play with Moses and Brown. And every team could probably say there's a player they're looking forward to seeing making first grade. They would like to see opportunities be given to, but the way it's done, and I guess the other highlight watching some of the games across the weekend, which we'll go into later, was some of the teams, e.g. the Warriors, e.g. Parramatta, even so much St. George for a bit of it, they looked like they could have scored where they wanted to in the first half when they were full strength, all three of those teams. But the reason they didn't do it is because they don't want to show off too much. Like, they don't want to go show what they've got there, show their attacking moves, risk obviously putting their foot down too much and fatiguing or causing injuries, because obviously there's more fatigue and injuries. But, yeah, that's obviously the other side of things as well. People just don't want to risk getting hurt. So you're going on me. You're frozen.
And on that note, special shout out to the Dolphins. Have I frozen?
No,
I'm good on my end.
You're back.
We're good? Oh, I was good on my end the whole time. That was weird. Shout out to Tom Gilbert. Obviously, devastating news on his part, being that ACL injuries. So not good news there. And I'm hearing that it might be the same news for Cohen Hess as well for the Cowboys. So that's the thing we definitely don't want to see when it comes to preseason trials. But at the end of the day, it can happen at training as well. That is the unfortunate event. So whether they have these trial games or not, injuries are still going to happen, whether it's the off-season, preseason, or whatever. But let's get stuck into some of these reviews. Heads up, I've watched majority of the games. I did miss yesterday's Cowboys Canberra. Adam got through a few games as well. So we will try and concentrate on the games that we have actually watched in a bit of detail for you guys. But first of all, basically the reserve grade sides for South Sydney and the Roosters. It was wet conditions. The handling wasn't great. It was reserve grade quality with a couple of very old heads in like Dylan Napa there, who didn't really do much quality wise. But the thing I really want to shout out for is I think the Roosters have some pretty good young talent in that squad. There's a few forwards I want to have a quick special shout out to. Corey Ross, the second rower, number 11 for the Roosters, who was just a madman, a man on a mission there for a while, just smashing. I think it was Braden Burns at the back a few times. It was like a man on a mission going, here's the experienced one of the group. I'm going to go after you and make a point. So actually been talking to Ross, and it's an exclusive for everyone watching this. I've actually got him on the show in the next week or two to come on and have a chat. Really looking forward to bringing some of this young talent through and actually getting to know them a lot more this year as well. So something that you can get really excited about here on League of Injuries. Second guy I want to shout out to, Celesi Focchetti, prop forward for the Roosters. I hope I've got your name right there. Apologies if I haven't. His runs, his tackling, his tackle busting, his offloads, he looks like a very, very bright future prospect. And I know there's a lot of clubs out there that are lacking in that front row department already, who would not do anything worse than having a chat to him and his manager and seeing what the issue or what's the contract status there for him. The last one, we've also spoken about James Tedesco. I thought their fullback, Callum Gromek, he looks really good. Flashes of brilliance. As I said, it was quite a scrappy game, but his style of fullback is very similar to James Tedesco, where he's very busy.
I'll give you one big difference. He's actually got the ability to stand and pass the ball at the same time. Two try assists in that game. I went back and watched some of the highlights, and he doesn't quite fall to the ground. Look, I know I've obviously joked about that for a long time with Teddy, but it is a weakness in his game, his ability to move the ball and quick. And to bring someone in, I think Tedesco's getting towards his career that has the ability to obviously shift the ball and play as an extra ball player. It could be huge for the Roosters.
Yeah, I think it will as well. And it's definitely someone I think they need to nail down long term, because I think he has a very, very bright future. Coming into that NRL stage, I'm looking forward to seeing him play New South Wales Cup and seeing how he handles that against men week in, week out. It'll be really, really interesting. And by the way, the score for that one, 46-10 to the Roosters, absolutely trash them. And for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, it was a little bit eye-opening. I felt like for a depth part of things. Like it sort of shows their depth really isn't quite there at the moment. And that's the worry, I think, for South Sydney this year. I think we all know their run on team full strength is red hot. But as soon as there's a couple of injuries there, like we're now saying for the back line, it actually starts to become quite, what's the right word here? Quite lenient, I guess, very, very quickly. There's not much depth there at all. Yeah, that is definitely a concern for mine for South Sydney this year.
It's hard to tell. Like, do we know what kind of squads they've taken over to Vegas? Like, how many players every team's taken?
22, I think I heard.
Is that it?
It's pretty much their full squad plus one other, I think.
Yeah, right. Because I know obviously they named the 21 players at the start of the week. I thought they might have been looking to take around that 26, 27 mark, because obviously injuries can happen at training and stuff, and they're obviously there for a week leading up to it. But
might be more. Don't quote me on it.
Yeah, I think it could be a bit more, because there's some names, of players that were floating back and forward last year between obviously first grade and reserve grade at both these clubs you're not seeing there. So I feel like they may have taken more, and I mean this in the most respectful way I possibly can, because obviously there's some good young players coming through, but it was a classic reserve grade battle. Most New South Wales Cup games every week you'll see that 6 or 7 players from first grade drop down that, pop up and down throughout the year. And this seemed to be a pretty, besides obviously Dylan Napa, I believe he's on a train and trial contract anyway. So he was, is he development now, or he's not in the top 30?
I think I think he's still on one of those not train trial, but the next level up, but he's still not regular 30.
So. That's what I mean. So obviously, there's a bit of a difference there, but you look through those teams, and I guess Braden Burns for South Sydney is probably the only other real player that has much first grade experience when you look at the South Sydney team. And the Roosters, you got Napa, and like I said, there's not really anyone else there, is there, that has a lot of, I'm looking through the teams now, not really anyone else has a lot of first grade experience. So
no, there's not. The next game, the Cronulla Sharks 12 defeated the Bulldogs 6. A very low scoring game. It's quite tough, quite gritty. If I'm being honest, the quality wasn't quite there for this game, even though both had a heap of first grade talent there. It was more of just that sort of grind battle. No one really wanted to do too much and show too much either. As you mentioned earlier, that's probably one of the reasons. I think the Sharks really missed Nico Hines, and it showed to me that he's so crucial to the Cronulla Sharks and pretty much everything to do with their attack. For the Bulldogs, I thought I know this was one of those games you didn't get to watch, Adam, but the Bulldogs... Yeah. The Bulldogs started really well. Like their energy levels and things like that were really good and really on. But I also think I was watching it happen, and I sort of watched it unfold, and I thought to myself, it was great to see that energy level. But I actually think it was one of their downfalls as well, because they weren't able to contain that emotion throughout the game. It sort of peaked so early and so high. It was like the only way for that to ever come was to go down. And it sort of did throughout the game, and they weren't able to stay at that level. And while they were up, they weren't able to really make any damage to the scoreboard and put some points on. Trindle, there's a lot of talk about him.
I think the Dogs, just touching on the Dogs, right? I saw the highlights, went much the highlights this game. And like I said, it was kind of there. I was flicking through a bit of it without watching a lot of it. But for me...
Not many highlights.
No, the highlights, the actual game. I was looking through the game. I can't even remember what I was doing on Friday night. That's how bad that is. But for me, it was clunkiness.
Yeah, blinked, didn't you? Blink 182.
I did, yes. That's exactly where I was too. Don't worry, I had it on my phone during Rise Against, watching a bit of it, as you were sent a photo of. So, no, for me, the Bulldogs, they're already feeling the pressure of the season. I know that sounds weird to say through trials, but if there's a team under the most pressure this year, it is the Bulldogs. We were now seeing Crichton line up in the centres when he was signed to play fullback. They're going with Taff at fullback, which they do for round one. As I mentioned last week, I feel like Serraldo's under pressure this year because he's got his big signings there in Crichton and Burton. Obviously, Marnie as well. Addo Carr's come along that club. So they've got their signings there that kick out. There's no excuses this year for the Bulldogs. I feel like they are feeling the pressure, and they're one of those teams that if they don't come out and win round one, I know they play us. If they don't win round one, the pressure is just going to continue to build on them, and it's going to get harder and harder for them as the season goes on, because They then play Cronulla in round 2 at Cronulla, which is never an easy place to play. Then they've got the Gold Coast at Belmore. But as a team is expected, well, I guess their fans expect them to make the 8 based on what they've signed. I can't say I would, but the Bulldogs obviously got a very passionate supporter base. There's no doubt about that. They'll turn up. That first game, Parramatta, there'll be 6,000 or 7,000 of them there, for sure. But it's going to get tougher and tougher for them. I feel like the clunkiness is already an indication that they're feeling the pressure of this year. And that seems weird to say after a trial, but yeah.
I think the fact of the matter, though, with this trial, and this is the thing that I was thinking when I watched this, there's a couple of teams in this trial challenge period that over the last 2 weeks that needed to treat it pretty seriously, and the Dogs were one of those, and they needed to show some of their cards, which I think they actually did. But the thing that it made me realize is they actually haven't really improved. Yes, they've made some signings, but their style of play hasn't improved yet. And that's been the frustration, I think, for Bulldogs fans for a number of years now, is their attack is basically non-existent whenever it gets to an attacking third of the field. And I saw that again on the weekend, and you mentioned it with Blake Taaffe and Stephen Crichton. Now, I'm sorry, but whether they sign Blake Taaffe or not, Blake Taaffe is not the player Stephen Crichton is. And the Dogs need their best attacking players in key positions for them to do anything in this competition this year. You cannot keep Stephen Crichton just because he's the best centre in the competition at present at centre. The Bulldogs need him to have these hands on the ball as much as possible, and he needs to be at fullback. I'm sorry to say, Blake Taaffe might be a good fullback, but he is not the player that Stephen Crichton is. And you cannot push someone of Stephen Crichton's caliber. He's now the captain as well. You can't push him out of an original plan for that caliber of player. No disrespect to Blake Taaffe, as I said, but
do we know it was the original plan though, or was it an immediate beat up? Like, do we know that when he signed?
I think at the time it had to have been. They had no one else at the time. They had Hayes Perham, who was getting blasted by the fans, and we already know about him. So,
yeah, I don't know. I think their biggest issue at Canterbury is going to be their 7 jersey. Obviously, they signed Sexton and come down from the Gold Coast to play the Bulldogs halfway through last year. Taaffe can play in the halves as well. I know that puts Burton back to 7, but I think Burton's a better centre than he is at 5'8". So there's that option as well. They could put Crichton back to fullback, put Taaffe into 5'8" and Burton in the centres potentially. There's always those options, but then you really need a really strong half, and I don't think they have that with Hutchison there. They do need that really strong half. Yeah,
I think that's what we seen on the weekend, and it's tough. I don't want to be too critical. It was the trial after all, but as I said, the Dogs for mine were someone that needed to show a little bit in this and give their fans some hope, and I think they did the opposite, really. I sort of come away with that, and I just think their halves are a massive issue. Burton, for mine, still wasn't really in the game at all, and I don't know if that's a reflection of Hutchinson and he's took away from his game slightly, but I also just think Burton's not a 5'8". We keep saying it. I don't think he's a half. He doesn't play well with that added pressure. I think he's he could be a world-class center. I have real high hopes for him in the future when it comes to the center position. The kicking game as well for the Bulldogs, apart from the Burton bomb, which teams now know is coming all the time, it felt like when I was watching it, apart from the Burton bomb, they had no other kicks in their arsenal. It was either Burton bomb or holy shit, what the hell do we do? And teams are going to find them out for that each and every week. There needs to be more than a Burton bomb. It's great, but it needs to be used sparingly.
Yeah, look, I just hope they turn up the way they did for these trials in round 1, and it'll be a wonderful day out at Combank Stadium.
I do agree with you there. The Saturday game started off in Fiji, the Melbourne Storm versus the Newcastle Knights. It was actually great to see the game being played there, the crowd turning up. And
can we highlight that? Yeah, it was weird, wasn't it? I expected, I know, it's the first time we're seeing a game in Fiji. We all know how nuts, crazy Fijian people are for rugby league now. I expected a bigger crowd. Where was the game? You got any more information about that?
Well, I don't know Fiji personally. It was Lautoka. Yeah, Churchill Park, Lautoka. So I'm not sure. There was definitely some space in the crowd.
It's obviously
I
a
don't
good
know,
crowd,
as you
right?
said. Yeah.
I expected those scenes we've seen in PNG over the years for those PNG, the Prime Minister's 11 and stuff, with people hanging out of trees and that. That's how much they love their rugby league. I'm there in July, and I'm super excited because I land as the Parramatta versus South Sydney game kicks off. So I'll be rushing straight out the airport and straight to some kind of pub or something, or hotel bar to watch that one, just to watch it with the locals. But love the rugby league. But on that game, look, I know I'm going to be critical of the Knights here. So I'll start with Melbourne. I thought Melbourne were very impressive, especially without the likes of Munster. Who else did they have out there? Had a few out, didn't they? Noah Nelson, Nelson, Sofa Solomona, Fa'alongo, obviously one of your favourites. Pez I thought was amazing. I don't know what Melbourne are going to do there. Obviously with Munster and Hughes and Pappenhausen, they're going to make it all work, but they've got another good one in their books there that club's going to be looking to absolutely. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. I don't think his best move would be to move away from the Storm, but development-wise, you want him to stay at the Storm. It's a catch-22 situation for his manager because it's like he'll pretty much get himself a guaranteed starting spot at about 6 to 7 other NRL clubs, I reckon, if he was to move next year easily. But does that affect his development? More than likely, yes.
I'd be moving on Hughes. I know people rate Hughes. I've never been a big fan of Hughes since Cameron Smith retired. But you look at your teams and you think to yourself, do we need, Melbourne have obviously big over the years for having a big 3 or big 4 or whatever. We've got Harry Grant, Munster, Pappenhausen, obviously a Fa'alongo coming through. Do they need all those players? And the simple answer is no. If they can bring someone in like Pezzett and offload, say, a Hughes and get Pezzett in to play halfback, look, there's not much difference between a half and a 5'8" these days, let's be honest. Frees up a bit of cap space for obviously younger players coming through. And obviously, it highlights that they probably don't need all those players.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the other thing was the Storm, I was actually really impressed with their go forward, especially early on in that game. There's been a lot of pressure and a lot of talk about their forward pack not really is there probably their downfall this year. I actually thought they really stood up, especially at the start of that game, as I said. And Liero to lock, I actually really like that so far, what I've seen. I think he's been doing a really good job the last couple of weeks there. And obviously that's allowing Sean Bloor, I anticipate, will be starting as of round 1 and in the back row for the Storm. And they've eased him in the last couple of weeks. That's pretty much it for the Storm side of things. For the Newcastle Knights, obviously this is your favourite topics to talk about in rugby league, and
let me talk. Let me talk. You got to just let me go on a rampage here because they're simply not it, and everything that we thought would happen across the season happened. Their halves are exposed against a much weaker Melbourne team. Newcastle were full strength. Like, no one could deny that. They were full strength. The only highlight of Newcastle's game was when Ponga stepped past, I believe, who did he step through to make that break?
Was it their right edge back rower, who I think is...
Was their back row? Was it when...
It was that hole. I forget. Maybe.
Wishart was defending out there because they made a few changes. So that was the only highlight of the day. The other highlight was obviously the Safidi brothers pulling the Swifty because that was absolutely brilliant. But Gamble, my opinion, the way Gamble's kicking game and involvement in that game and poor defensive reads and stuff, he's had to have played himself out of a starting round 1 jersey. Like, if you're a coach watching that, I thought Newcastle played their better footy when Cogger come on. And we saw Cogger play, obviously, more minutes as well. So I know Cogger come on and played a bit of 9 as well, which I found very interesting. But as soon as he went to that halves, I thought they looked a bit more settled. Gamble was awful, absolutely awful. Yeah. And for me, if Newcastle are to, let's say, do what they did last year and say not miss out as I'm expecting them to, they need to make that change now, because if Gamble plays the way he did and Hastings was left to do a fair bit, which he can't do, that puts so much more pressure on Ponga, which teams is going to gobble up as they did on the weekend.
I completely agree. I think that Gamble, for mine, played as if the coach pulled him aside before the game and said, this is your game to prove to me you get the number 6. And he played like he, instead of grabbing that pressure and absorbing it and taking it on and letting it push him on, it looked like it just weighed on him, and he kept trying stuff that, to be honest with him, the best thing that he did last year was play to his strengths. And yeah, the other day he did the opposite. Like, he just tried to start doing cutout passes and stuff. Passes kept going back behind players that it were intended to. The Knights attack was so clunky. Like, Ponga can't fix that as well. That's the thing. Like, he can run and stuff, but sorry to break it to everyone, he had a killer year last year. I don't think we've ever seen a player after that sort of a year back it up the year after and produce that once again. Like, I've no doubt in the world Ponga is capable of doing it. Whether he can do it again is the other question, because teams will be so onto him now. And the fact that what I saw on the weekend was, if you shut down Ponga, the Knights attack is non-existent. Now, if they can put Cogger into the mix and have him as a sort of as help there, I think it can change things. But if the coach is adamant to try and stick with what happened last year and keeps that Hastings gamble combination, I don't think it's going to work. And I think they're going to start the season chasing their tail similar to what they did last year. And they don't want to start like that, because this competition, it will quickly get away from you if that's how you start, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And it's obviously I feel like it's going to be a lot closer competition this year. And they haven't got the run home they had last year. They were so lucky to have as well.
Yeah. Next game was the Warriors versus the Dolphins. Shout out to the New Zealand crowd. I thought they were absolutely sensational. 2 sold-out games for trials in a row. Just seriously, like, the game over there is absolutely flying. And the NRL, I know they're off to Vegas and stuff, promoting the game, getting it out there, which is all well and good. But honestly, if you don't act on this and start to really kill the game over there in New Zealand and just take it out to where it needs to go, and there's a real option for them not to take over rugby there, because that will never happen. But there is a real chance for them at the moment to grab this momentum that they've got and do something with it. They need to make sure that they do it, because if they let this slip, then honestly, it's probably one of their worst decisions they've ever made, I think, for the NRL. So
maybe a magic round in New Zealand. We spoke after obviously the COVID years, and some teams did do it about teams taking their home games against the Warriors across to obviously New Zealand. And I know there's some teams that regularly do that, but look, it wouldn't be a bad idea for teams to do that and obviously try and grow on that as well, because there is a lot of people over there that obviously they support the Warriors. Other teams are well supported in New Zealand as well. And what you'll find happens over there with this growth of rugby league is the more the Warriors go well, these people obviously going to jump ship across to the Warriors. Is it time? I know there's talk about obviously bringing another team in. Is it time for a second New Zealand team? Like,
I'd do it.
We're seeing the A-League do it. The A-League are bringing in a second New Zealand team into Auckland. Obviously, you got the one in Wellington, and obviously you got Auckland, you got Christchurch. Well, obviously the Warriors are out of Auckland, but you got Christchurch, you've got Wellington. There's some pretty good stadium. I think it's Dunedin as well over there as well, which is a cracker stadium. Yeah. So
caked in.
I think it could be time. And if they do it, obviously the NRL needs to come with some kind of a war chest to try and attract some big name signings across from rugby. But yeah, look, it wouldn't be a bad idea in my opinion.
Me either. I definitely wouldn't. I think I brought it up throughout that game there, and that's exactly what I would be doing. I've heard this talk that they want to get to eventually 20 teams, and if that is the case, New Zealand just has to be an automatic selection and have a second team in that competition. Just on the game, I just want to the Warriors for mine. There's so many people out there saying that the Warriors are slipping. That game summed up to me why I've continued to say the Warriors will not be slipping this year. They look so well-rounded as a team. It's actually scary. Like the quality that they've got right around the park, and like special shout out to someone like Rocco Berry. He'd never get spoken about. I thought he was absolutely sensational on the weekend. And the fact that they've got so many stars in that back line, he will be able to produce that sort of stuff week in, week out, because, sorry to say, but defenses won't be able to mark every single player. They'll have eyes on, say, Johnson if he's doing the wraparound, or RTS, CNK as well. And then Rocco Berry can just have his time to shine. And I love Rocco Berry as a player. I think he's very, very good. A lot of teams out there could definitely do with him. I'm thinking about my own team as well when I speak about that. But anyway, yeah, I just want to shout out, as I said, shout out to the New Zealand Warriors, who I thought were just sensational and look really hungry for this year, which the Warriors of old, especially when it came to that sort of a game, even though it was a trial, it's like a mindset thing, I think, now for them that they've changed. They would have come out after last year and sort of treated this like a bit of a party, I reckon. But they looked so on. Like they just looked from the get-go, they were there to play some footy. For the Dolphins side of things, I'm really starting to worry now. I had them on the edge of my 8. I'm starting to worry now that's not going to happen because of their halves. I've got some serious concerns about their halves taking control of games when they need to. Now, the score was 34-22, which does look a lot better than I feel like it actually was. I think the Warriors was basically all over him pretty much most of this game. And credit to the Dolphins for sticking tough and staying in the contest when it wasn't going for him. But I'm just worried that the halves won't be able to get the quality balls that backline needs. And that backline is full of talent, but there's no point in having that backline if you don't have the halves that can use it properly.
The simple fact is the Warriors, if this was a regular season game, they would have won by 50 or 60. As I touched on earlier, they look like in that first half when they were full strength, they could essentially score when they wanted to. Look, what you said about the Dolphins, you're right. And it's been highlighted, obviously, their halves aren't strong enough. It was very evident. I just don't think they're it this year. You can put a pencil to them already. I know it's hard to say based on a trial, but I don't think we'll be worrying too much about the Dolphins. I know there was a lot of fairy tale last year when they first started and teams seeing how well they went, and obviously it didn't end wonderfully. There's a few injuries and stuff, but they've obviously got some good signings there. Obviously, Flegler and Herbie Farnworth coming in as well, but I just don't think they've got enough there at the moment.
Again, as we said, special shout out to Tommy Gilbert. Unfortunately, with his ACL now being confirmed, and we'll miss yet another season after a bad injury halfway through last year as well. He's a real talent, and that's the other reason that he's the heart and soul of that Dolphins team, and losing him again is a huge, huge blow. The reserve grade cup once again was on after this game, which was Manly versus the Broncos. Their main stars are over in Vegas partying it up. 40 points to 14. The Broncos demolishing Manly in a sign that I thought just the depth difference is ridiculous. Broncos have depth in spades this year. They got some really great young talent coming through the ranks. Manly don't. I think that's what that sort of showed me on the weekend. Another team for mine, Manly, if there is some injuries throughout the year, it is an area of concern for them. Broncos just have some classy young talent coming through, which is actually pretty scary. That's all I've really got to say on that game, because it was not a hard watch. It was fun to watch their talent go around, but it just
even
wasn't.
The crowd knew it was a reserve grade game. It didn't turn up.
Yeah.
Look at some of the good crowds. I personally, I know obviously it was different there as well, but I don't think any trial game should be played at home venues.
No, me either. I hated that.
I'm not about it, especially with that kind of crowd turning up. Like, I know it was a reserve grade standard game, but you bring that game to the country somewhere and you'll get a few thousand people turn up just to watch some footy. But I think that's something that NRL needs to work on as well for this preseason challenge.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I just really want to bring it up because there was a couple last week as well. I think there was a double header at Oakey Jubilee, I believe, last week with Para in that and stuff. Like, honestly, NRL, what the fuck are you doing? Like, there's country towns out there that fully deserve at least this to go out there. A trial game, get the crowd amongst. Like, yesterday, I was at Ipswich. It was sold out. Like, people are dying to watch this stuff. It's even though it's trials, it means a lot to these communities who are diehard rugby league fans. What's the point of taking into these venues that get weekly, basically, rugby league and all this country rugby league stuff? There's towns out there that are dying because of rugby leagues dying in their area. And it's just, I think it's disgusting. Like, the fact that we didn't take every single game, it should just be automatic. This last 2 weeks should just be automatically said, we're going to neutral venues. We're growing the game that way. We're saying thank you to all our grassroots areas. End of story. Whether we get 5,000 there, we get 500 there.
You got to look at your memberships, and there's so many obviously different options for memberships. I know how many Parramatta memberships come from this area, for example. Parramatta played Newcastle at Maitland, obviously 5 minutes from my house in 2018. I know it doesn't seem like much. It's only half an hour from Newcastle, but it was the official opening of Maitland, the new sports ground at Maitland. They continued 2 years after Newcastle. I believe they played the Sharks and St. George, and then they've stopped doing that. But that Parramatta versus Newcastle game, I think they capped the crowd at about 11,000, and it was sold out. Like, it was sold out weeks in advance. People were trying to buy tickets and stuff for off different Facebook groups and stuff like that. But it was incredible, and it actually made the game mean a little bit more. The fact it was in your own hometown, like, I went to that game, and out of the 11,000, there was probably 6,000 Parramatta fans turned up from local areas, and it was huge. But this, like I said, this whole preseason cup thing, we could talk about it for hours. This needs a bit of a revamp for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think NRL have a look at yourselves for next year and fix that up. The Dragons beating the Tigers 34 points to 18. Honestly, I've said in a few comments, Dragons look like they actually became an NRL team over the last week, and the Tigers look like they would struggle to beat an under-15s team. It was eye-opening, to say the least, for the West Tigers. That was pathetic. The worry for me was the Benji in the pregame said and made a real big point of this, saying they've got 3-week break now. They're making sure that this game is treated pretty much like an NRL game. That's what the standard is that he expects. And they came out and they dished that shit out. They literally did not look like they wanted to be there from the kickoff. And if I was a West Tigers fan, I would be asking some serious questions there, because that was one team for mine I was looking at over the last 2 weeks who needed to take things seriously. I thought they did look half decent last week against the Warriors, but again, that was against a 12-man Warriors for most of that game. So if they didn't look half decent, I would have been asking even more questions right now. But
yeah,
they're just non-existent.
Their only highlight was Buller, and
I feel sorry for the kid. He's in a team that's just going to get bashed.
Yeah. If they put so much pressure on that young kid, we could see him fade away or look to get the hell out of there. But for me, I thought Appy overplayed as well. I think he feels like he knows he needs to step up as a player, and I feel like he did that, but not always positively. You don't want to get to that, Robbie Farah had that problem, obviously, and that concerns me. I know Robbie's obviously involved there with the Tigers. My biggest criticism as Robbie Farah as a player was he'd never let his halves play. And he did that at Origin level as well. He'd always try and run everything out of dummy half. And it doesn't work as much in the modern game unless you've got a Cameron Smith there. And even the back end of Cameron Smith's career, it didn't seem to work as much, because we saw him obviously go to first receiver quite a bit there as he got on a bit. But I'm trying to highlight the reason why it doesn't work, and it's hard. I feel like our middles, given the interchange, our middles are just getting fitter and playing bigger minutes, and it means their ability to turn around and defend up is making it so much harder for the hookers in the modern game. Obviously we'll see fatigue come in the game at some stage, and there'll be those crafty hookers like Harry Grant and stuff can rush away, but Appy, obviously, in the later end of his career, isn't going to be that player now. Yeah. So big problems for the Tigers. But as you said, I was actually quite impressed with St. George. I come on and question Flanagan as a coach in a way. And, look, obviously what Ben Hunt, and, mate, for a bloke that looked like he didn't want to be there last year, was trying to everything he could get. He looked like he was really enjoying his football. And a happy Ben Hunt, someone who's enjoying their football, is still a very dangerous player. So I want to change a couple of things. I had St. George finish. I know you had St. George finishing last. So I had St. George finish. I had them second last, and I had the Tigers finishing 15th. So I want to switch that around if I can, and at least put the Dragons to 15th. And based off what I saw with the Bulldogs, I might even put the Dragons to 14th. If they continue to play that footy, I know they're only playing the Tigers, but if they can turn up and play that consistent footy and get better, they'll find themselves in that team, but that battle of that team's trying to focus out for, I reckon, 7th to 12th. So
I agree. And
Dragons.
As you said, massive shout out to Ben Hunt. I actually want to do also a shout out to, I think, Jacob Little in the hooker. Actually looked like he just came from nowhere this game and actually started to play some footy, and he was tearing them apart around the ruck. He was playing some really good footy, which I think will help Hunt a lot, having him playing that sort of style, because it will free him up a lot. Special shout out, I know he's copped his criticism, but Kyle Flanagan, I thought, was quite good and helped Ben Hunt out a lot as well. I know his dad came out a few weeks ago and said that he will help Ben Hunt a lot and take a lot of that first receiver role off Ben Hunt to free him up a lot. Now, I did question that originally, but I'm actually starting to like it and how it looks, because Flanagan obviously doesn't have that attacking spark that Ben Hunt does. And if he can just take that little bit of work off Ben Hunt and be that main middle guy, organising the forwards and stuff, and letting Ben Hunt have that little bit more room, that's just good things for the Dragons. The last guy I want to shout out to is Jaden Sewer on the edge for the Dragons was absolutely sensational. And he's going to give a lot of halfbacks or 5'8" some nightmares this year because he looks incredibly fit. Him and Sully together is a dangerous combination. Sully, again, he is also looking extremely fit this year. And as you said, Adam, like I think it's a little bit of credit there to Flanagan because he's actually got a team that does look fit. Like that's one thing I think we'll see from the Dragons this year. There'll be in a lot of contests.
That try that Ravalawa scored, where Sully just took that hard hit up and ran straight over like 3 or 4 blokes, and then Ravalawa just barged over. Like imagine those two run at you every game. Like, you know,
nightmare,
absolute nightmare. If they can find that balance. And I guess the criticism for both those players is a bit of rocks and diamonds games over the years. They haven't consistently been able to do it. If they can constantly produce some good stuff, like I said, it scares me because I love bagging out the Dragons, but they could turn things around and have a pretty decent year.
I agree. Lastly, on the Tigers, I just wanted to mention their halves at the moment, Sullivan and Caesar. There's a lot of pressure on both of them because I think Lockie Galvin is a superstar in the making. I loved what I've seen from him on the weekend, even in a team that was getting demolished. For him to shine the way he did, I thought says a few things about him. And it's fair to say there's only one position available next year, or one jersey available in that halves next year with Jerome Luai coming in. And as Adam keeps saying, it might be this year. We don't know. But my prediction right now is that it will be a Luai and Lockie Galvin halves pairing from next year. I see both Caesar and Sullivan not being in the halves for mine. And that's a worry for mine because they've signed Sullivan to quite a big deal for, I think, 4 years at the moment. So I don't know what they're going to do.
The problem there is Sullivan's obviously quite young in experience. So we're relying a bit on Caesar, but Caesar's been missing from the NRL since, I believe, 2019. Was that the Canberra Grand Final?
Yeah, I think so.
He went over to Leeds after that, and he certainly didn't stand out for Leeds, that's for sure. I'm a Leeds fan. He didn't stand out in the Super League. He didn't go over there and do things. It was him and Blake Austin there together, and they just weren't doing things they were meant to do. So to come back, and there's obviously a lot of pressure on him to be that, I guess, experienced head and that creative kind of settled half in a way. I feel like he's actually hindering Sullivan's game a little bit at the moment.
I agree. The Sunday games, the World Club Challenge, I want to go and talk about that last. So the Raiders versus the Cowboys 36-26. I didn't watch this game, guys. I was out at Ipswich, as I said, and my phone had very little battery, and I was in the middle of a draft as well, so I needed to make sure I had some battery power for that. But Adam, I think you said you got glimpses of it. I did hear Strange for the Raiders play phenomenal, and it looks like he's got the 5'8" spot ahead of Weeks.
I watched the start of it. Strange obviously had a 7 jersey on that. Obviously Foggy's going to wear that when he returns. But Strange, obviously, as I stated, my pick for the Dalian Rookie of the Year, but he stood out massively in that game. I actually turned it off, I believe, after Canberra scored their first 2 tries. I actually started playing some FIFA because I just couldn't get into it. I thought they were absolutely going to walk over him. Thought they were going to do it with ease over the Cowboys. And after me turning around saying I expect Canberra to get the spoon, I thought to myself, I'm going to look like an idiot here, aren't I? If Canberra go and absolutely smash the I've got the Cowboys to slide. There's no doubt about that. But I turned it off, but I can't comment a lot on it. But what I will say, what I did watch, it wasn't a very high-quality game. Had some good moments. Same as the Dragons and Tigers. It wasn't a high-quality game. Had some good moments. Some of the hits in that Dragons-Tigers I forgot to mention. Can we just touch on the Justin Holland hit on Lomax?
Oh,
that was incredible. That was absolutely incredible. But there was some return serves going back and forward, and this game just didn't even have any of that, what I saw. So I stopped watching it. I had enough. Look, if it was an NRL game, I would have continued watching it because I probably had some kind of multi on it or whatever. But given it was a glorified trial, I thought, nah, I can't do this. So sorry, Canberra and Cowboys fans. Can't comment too much, but enjoy the preseason win, Cowboys fans.
Last game for the preseason trial was the Titans versus the Eels. Eels running away 26-16 winners. Live, pretty good game to watch. I felt like Parramatta owned it quite early on in that game and really took their foot off the pedal in the second half. Titans, the display was a little bit worrying. I know Des has is massive on not caring about trials, so it's hard to read too much into it for a Titans point of view. But they weren't great. I know they did have a few of their stars out, Jaden Campbell, David Fafita, to name a couple. It was interesting to see Parramatta took up, I think, a smaller squad than originally noted, and they did lose Maddo, I think, before the game. They lost to one or two early-ish on as well, so they were down to like a six-man bench, I think, at one stage, which for a trial is actually quite small. Normally teams have a 15-man bench, and they just rotate the crap out of their players. It was definitely smaller than the Titans. Earlier, like our first stanza, I actually thought the Eels forwards didn't look as fit as they have been in the past. That was sort of what I was noting at the start. And my concern was Brad Arthur was going to overplay the shit out of his forwards already in a trial game. And I was thinking, oh no, please don't do it again.
Here we go again.
He looked to, yeah, it was a worry. Sevo just needs to get out of this team. He's defense, like, part of me, the right side attack was fantastic. It was great to watch Moses just light it up and take control. I think he's in for a massive year, as everyone's seen on the status this morning, and it generated a lot of talking points I've checked out. So a lot of people are talking about Mitchell Moses. It just generates something. I don't know what it is, but very love or hate type player. The left side defense, though, is a huge concern for the Eels, and if I was an opposition attack, I would be making sure I load it up. If it's Simonson and Sevo together, no thanks.
The problem is obviously Sevo. Look, there was a couple of times where Dylan Brown tried to cover it as well, which if we're going to play that style of that up and in, obviously that's what he's got to do, and he did that. But fuck, that first try, I'll talk about more on the Parramatta podcast when we get to it, but that Sivo one, he just literally was in no man's land. He's got no idea. The bloke's got no idea. He just doesn't get rugby league still. 3 to 4 weeks out suspended. Brad Arthur made the comment, obviously, that one of the things Parramatta put down to their season going so bad last year was 26 weeks worth of suspensions all up. He has to make an example out of Sivo. When Sivo comes back after 3 or 4 weeks, he has to go to New South Wales Cup because he's let his team down straight away. It was a stupid shot. And once again, it's because he got himself caught in no man's land. But I don't want to talk too much about him. I just hope he enjoys his time in New South Wales Cup. But the one more thing I will say about him is, I said this to you, once Gutho went off the field, Sivo did not come in looking for the ball once. He did not touch the ball until it was taken off. Like, was he even taken off? He stayed on. He's played the whole game. He did not touch the ball. Like, that just shows the bloke has got no idea he doesn't get rugby league. And, like, his time's up. Like, take your money, go to French rugby. I know French rugby were chasing him, and go over there and pretend to be a rugby player because, look, most wingers could score all the tries he scores anyway. On the Gold Coast, quickly, obviously, like you said, they did have a couple of impact players out there. I thought Brimson was great attackingly with the ball.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried if I was them defensively with that lineup because, as I touched on earlier, there's 3 teams this week looked like they could have scored, but they wanted to, and they would have if it was an NRL game, and Parramatta was one of them. In an NRL game, Parramatta could have put 40 on in the first half. Obviously, there was some clunkiness being a trial from both teams and some clunkiness in some of Parramatta's, I won't say backline. The backline looked pretty smooth, but a couple of little forward passes and stuff like that crept into the game just due to probably some fatigue and some hot conditions. You're obviously there. It was pretty hot. And not saying it was hot because you were there, FYI. But, you know, they look to do it too easy, Parramatta. And I think the Gold Coast have got a lot to work on defensively.
Yeah, it was pretty humid as well. It kept sort of raining and stopping, especially at the start of that game as well, which didn't make it easy, though it was probably tricky conditions out there. I was on a special shout out to the fullbacks. Gutho, getting to experience him live at a ground where you're really close, and it's obviously not as loud as the big stadium, so you can hear a lot more things. He honestly doesn't shut up. And that's one thing that really impresses me when it comes to Gutho is that he literally he's like that. People talk about like with the Roosters, and I'm not trying to compare the two, but when we go back to their premiership years, like Cooper Cronk was the on-field coach. That's the role that Gutho plays for this Parramatta team. Like, I feel like he's so vital to this team just from what I get to see live and how he interacts and holds himself, that it actually spurs on his fellow teammates to make sure they're continuing to push. And there was literally times where he'd be in the middle. I can hear him yelling like Reg and stuff. Reg, get your ass here, get here, get here. Like, he'd be up there pointing to the line and stuff and really working him. So that was really, really impressive to see. The final one was the player that wasn't even playing was Jaden Campbell, and a special shout out to him because I was sitting about 10 meters away from him in the grandstands. And first of all, obviously him and David Fafita were the two big guns not playing for the Titans. And obviously it was a Titans home game. There was a lot of Titans fans there. Getting autographs galore. I probably think there's actually more power, to be fair, but it was probably it was good, but it's hard to tell because they're both very similar color sort of schemes, so it's sort of just all blends in nicely. David Fafita was nowhere to be seen the whole game. Like, it was like he was sort of hiding from any sort of media or fans to get autographs, which I thought was a little bit disappointing. But Jaden Campbell sat there throughout the whole entire there was a New South Wales Queensland Cup game beforehand. He came and sat for about throughout the second half of it, and kids kept coming up to him, adults wanting photos, talking to him. He did not shy away from anything. He sat there the whole time, signing every single autograph. And I thought, for a guy that's still quite young and coming through, he could have easily got up after 5 minutes ago on too hard basket. I want to go and hit like David Fafita did, but he didn't.
It's not in his blood. He's learned from one of the best, hasn't he? Preston was obviously one of the best interactive with fans and still is. And just, it was obviously one of those blokes that was grateful that people wanted to be around him and talk to him and stuff like that. And I've had some great conversations with him over the years. So good to see. Obviously that's rubbed off on his young fella. But just on the Dave Fafita one, it's interesting you mentioned that because obviously post-game they do the interviews and they're interviewing some players. And you could literally, and all the players are standing around talking, as you would have seen, and they break off in their groups and have chats somewhere straight to the fence. You could hear kids screaming, Dave, 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 come here, David. And he just was putting his head down, ignoring them. Even you could see it on the cameras. So, look, you're going to get some of those players, and I get it. There's some of that play for our club, aren't wonderful with fans and interactions and stuff. But I don't think it's too much, especially when you haven't played a game, to obviously go sign a few autographs for some kids, especially in an area like that. It's, lives and breathes rugby league. And let's be honest, the Titans need more fans.
They do. It wasn't great to see, as I said. So, Jaden Campbell, massive shout out to you. Credit to you and your credit to your club. Obviously, the World Cup challenges quickly. I just want to touch on it. 16-12. Wigan are your World Club champions for the Super League. Penrith just can't seem to win these. And there was a lot of talk afterwards about, obviously, the referee and the impact that the referee had on the game, some crucial decisions. Adam, what do you got to say on this one? Because I have had my say. I'll probably say again my say.
Are you setting me up for a Twitter raid here? Like, I'll go ahead and say it. Obviously, a lot didn't go Penrith's way, but the decisions were set up what they were based on those video referee decisions. And I guess you can't really. I didn't think there was conclusive evidence to overturn that last one either. I didn't see the ball on the ground. And I didn't think there was conclusive evidence to overturn the Wigan try either. Like, you can't say he was short. If it went up no try, they couldn't have overturned either and made it a try. For both of them, if they both went the other way, referee made his decision, we've got to go with that. What I will say is to the Penrith fans out there whinging, I don't feel sorry for you because you've had every fucking decision go your way for 3 years now. Okay? So you've got to learn this is what happens when you go over there. Now, the year before they played St Helens, obviously over here in Penrith, and nothing went against them then. St Helens just won it all. Penrith went out with this smug attitude against St Helens, who had just won 4 comps in a row over there, thinking they were better than them, and didn't turn up and didn't take them for granted. Now, the top 4 or 5 Super League teams, probably the top 4 Super League teams, would be in our top 8 every year. People have this thing that the Super League's weaker. Yeah, the bottom teams are weaker, no doubt about that, because there's obviously not as big a pool over there for players, but it's getting stronger and stronger. And there's another idea for you for the preseason challenge. Obviously, it happened before. I know that comp starts a bit earlier, but our top 4 versus their top 4 every year would be a fascinating way to do things, wouldn't it? Because I think you'd find that a lot of the time the Super League teams would come out on top because it's a different style over there. Got them into that grittiness. It's hard to describe, but it's the English Super League game is more a combination of rugby union in a way. Like, I know that seems silly to say, but it's like they don't try and shift the ball as much. Then when they do decide to move, they just do these spectacular things. I guess hard work is a bit more of the way they do it. I think Penrith went over and felt entitled, like they were going to be able to move the ball around, and Biggin got on top of him in the niggle, and obviously that was it.
That's the thing that I think when I it actually made me feel a bit sick, and I was actually getting quite annoyed when afterwards. I don't want to go in on Penrith fans, but it's been a bit of a running battle at the moment with League of Inches podcast and Penrith fans. They seem to have in on us for some reason and talk about us a fair bit.
You know why? Because they like their team. They're entitled. They're used to being on top. They are. They're used to being on top. They're used to everything going their way. And it's like Melbourne fans back in the day. Like Melbourne fans obviously went through those dominant years, but now know they're over the cap and stuff. As soon as one little thing didn't go their way, it was the end of the world. Here we are with Penrith fans again, and they're just looking for someone to blame when their team gets beat. So go on, tee off on them. I want to see it because then you'll cop the brunt, not me.
So you're right about what you said about the two decisions. They're trying to go for the referee. Now, the problem with this whole system, and I've said it since day dot of this system being implemented, if the referee has literally no idea what has happened, why does he need to go up and make a call for it? Literally go up and say, sending this upstairs because unfortunately I didn't see the ball at all. I haven't been able to see it wherever it landed. I don't know if it's a try or no try. That's literally the reason why I'm going up. And then put it back onto the video ref who has enough time to go through all these camera angles to come up with a decision that will be more than likely the right decision for majority of the time, but it's not being made off an assumption made by the referee who has taken upstairs because he doesn't know what's happened. That's the issue there to the Penrith fans that are complaining about it and everyone else complaining about it. It wasn't the referee. It's the system in place that is affecting the game, and it's been affecting it for a while now. It happens with the bunker and stuff as well. Like referees are sending decisions up that they've got no idea about and are actually impacting on that decision because if there's not conclusive evidence, they're agreeing with a decision that isn't 100%. They're agreeing with a decision that's pretty much a guess, if we're being brutally honest. It's just, I don't get it. I don't understand how a professional league can run that way where you're making a decision off a guess.
Before we did this, it was the benefit of the doubt was always going to the attacking team anyway. So,
I'm happy to leave it like that then. Just don't take it, don't do it for the referees. Like, we're literally going off a guess at the moment. When you take it down, it's literally the referee guessing what he reckons.
But it was also like that. It was like that for 90 years as well before the video referee come in. So it's one of those things that, look, I think one thing that all fans of the game need to accept, and we've obviously accepted a long time ago, is things are going to go your way and things are not going to go your way. They're called 50-50 calls for a reason. Some teams go through these stages where I've had this theory for quite a while. If you've got Penrith playing the Tigers, for example, okay, let's look at last year. Penrith play the Tigers. If a referee goes out and gives the Tigers 10 positive calls their way and the Tigers going to win this game, everyone's going to turn around and say, you helped the Tigers win the game. If they go out and give Penrith 10 calls their way positively, they're meant to win the game anyway. So it is what it is. So, like I said, they're called 50-50. Some teams get the better rub of the green. It's just one thing you've got to accept when things don't go your way. And that's a message for anyone in life as well.
Yeah, true. Secondly, for mine, no one's given credit to the Wigan Warriors, who I thought their game plan was absolutely superb. They completely knocked Penrith off their game with their little tactics, their dirty tactics. I'll be honest, it was dirty, but it worked. And that's what you got to do to beat these champion teams. Penrith is a champion team. There is no denying that. They are a fantastic organization. They're a class above majority of the field and have been now for years. Credit to them. But you've got to play that style to beat them, and they got away with it. So they did what they needed to do to win the game. And I've got no doubt Penrith fans would be cheering if they ended up turning that around, played that similar style, and won the game. That's just natural. Like, credit to the Wigan Warriors for turning up and doing that. And finally, for the Penrith Panthers, they actually played dog shit. Their first half especially was one of the worst halves of football I have watched the Penrith Panthers play in 4 years. That's being brutally honest about it, taking your sunnies off and actually watching the game. Nathan Cleary had arguably his worst game he has played in that 4-year period as well. He was completely off the bit. Their last tackle
why do you think that was?
Well,
What do you think
I was
he's
going to
been?
say Fowler, but she actually wasn't there.
Oh, she wasn't.
She was
Yeah,
off
but
in
she might have been.
nah, they were off in AEU or
Yeah,
UAE.
they were. But she might have been there a couple of weeks before, or maybe he was missing her.
Yeah, maybe. It
The
was the
truth
Fowler
is,
effect, guys.
he's got a Wigan jersey now, so maybe he's going to sign there. There's a little indication that he could be interested in going to the Super League. I think his best bet's to go to French rugby, but anyway,
It was eye-opening because, but for mine, Penrith are so good, especially Nathan Cleary, at adjusting on the run. They had this game plan coming into it to not kick on the last tackle. Now, people are going, oh, it's smaller in goals. He would have risked the 6 tackle sets, blah, blah, blah. Nathan Cleary is one of the best general play kickers we have ever seen. I hardly ever see him kick the ball out. So that would not have been an issue for Nathan Cleary to adjust to. He would have been training the last week and a half that they were over there with those kicks as well. He's that quality of a player. He would have been able to adjust to that. They've obviously had a plan. I'm happy for him to start that off, but it clearly was not working. So adjust on the run and start kicking the damn ball. They scored their first try off a crossfield, that half crossfield chip / bomb thing that they do that lands on around that halfback area. And it was perfect. We didn't see it again. So I don't get why you're so crucial and critical on the referee saying, oh, it cost us the game, blah, blah. No, he didn't. Penrith Panthers, if they played like we know they can, they would have won that game. But they didn't. It was an off game for Penrith. That's it for mine. Like, credit to the Wigan Warriors. Well done. You're the World Club champions. Unfortunately, Penrith is still 0-4 now, which is I actually think is the thing that's getting to Penrith at the moment. The fact that they can't win this is deep down actually getting to them.
It's hilarious, isn't it? That's great. I love it.
But if you win the grand final, you'll take it. So that's it, guys. That's all we've got time for. We've done the review. We went a lot longer than I thought we were actually going to go, but that's what we do when we start talking footy, myself and Adam. But hope you enjoyed. Special announcement with the Wednesday show this week. It will not be a live show on Wednesday. We will be pushing it back to later in the week, obviously, to time it in with the Vegas game, which is on the Sunday, where a few of us are away for work, etc. on the Wednesday night, so just simply won't work with some poor internet connection, etc. So bear with us. I will have some videos that uploaded in time to watch, so you'll get your League of Inches fix. But yeah, we will be back a bit later this week. But there'll still be a Supercoach show that will be up tomorrow night. And I think, Adam, the Paris, we are going ahead of, did you say tomorrow night, or we'll just wait until a bit later?
Probably not. We might just wait
later.
Obviously, do a bit of a review on that one. And obviously, is Teamless Tuesday happening tomorrow for all teams? Is that the way it's going to be?
I believe it. No, it's only for the 4 teams, and then the rest of the teams are the week after.
Well, that's going to be an absolute Supercoach nightmare, isn't it? So,
yes.
All right.
Yes, it is. Anyway, enjoy, guys. Thank you for listening once again. Please like, subscribe, send in your hate mail as well. We will discuss it. Always happy to talk, but keep it respectful, please. Enjoy your night.